The gas lamp sputters, casting twisted shadows across the cobblestones as thick yellow fog rolls off the Thames like something alive. You can barely see 3 feet ahead. The fog is so dense it has texture, weight, a sulphurous taste that coats your tongue with every breath. Somewhere in the darkness, a woman screams. Then silence. Just the drip of condensation from iron railings, the distant clatter of horse hooves on wet stone, and that smell, coal smoke, raw sewage, rotting fish, and something else. Something metallic that might be blood or might be the Thames itself, flowing sluggish and toxic just beyond the embankment wall. Welcome to Whitechapel on a November night in 1888. The gaslights create islands of sickly yellow light in an ocean of darkness. And in those shadows, the largest city on earth hides secrets that would horrify the respectable citizens sleeping safely in Mayfair and Kensington. This is London at the height of the Victorian era. Brilliant and brutal, innovative and cruel, the most advanced metropolis in human history, and simultaneously one of the most dangerous places a person could possibly be. Welcome to Arthur's living history. Have you ever wondered what it actually felt like to walk through Victorian London after dark, when the fog descended and the city transformed into something from a nightmare? Let me explain. Forget every sanitized costume drama you've ever seen. Forget the romanticized version of Victorian England with elegant ladies in crinolines taking tea. That world exists, but it occupies maybe 5% of London. The other 95% is something else entirely, and we're about to walk straight through it. It's 8:30 on the evening of November 7th, 1888, and we're beginning our journey at Paddington Station, one of the great railway terminals that ring London like fortresses. The station itself is a cathedral of iron and glass, Isambard Kingdom Brunel's masterpiece, with a roof span of 700 feet, creating an enclosed space so vast that steam from arriving locomotives forms its own weather system. Rain falls inside the building, condensation dripping from the iron lattice work onto passengers below. The platforms teem with humanity. First-class passengers in top hats and fur-trimmed coats stride toward waiting carriages. Third-class passengers, factory workers, servants, clerks, shuffle toward cheaper accommodation, clutching carpet bags and parcels. Street children dart between the crowds, some selling newspapers, others looking for pockets to pick or dropped coins to snatch. The noise is overwhelming, whistles shrieking, porters shouting, the hiss of steam, the rumble of iron wheels on iron rails. But we're not taking a train. We're descending into something new, something revolutionary, something that many Londoners still consider dangerous or even blasphemous. We're taking the Underground. The entrance to the Metropolitan Railway sits at the western edge of Paddington, and even approaching it feels like descending into hell. Gaslit stairs plunge into the earth, walls already glistening with moisture. The air temperature drops immediately, and that distinctive smell hits you. Coal smoke, damp brick, human bodies pressed together, and something else. Something sulphurous that seems to rise from the very earth itself. Here's something that'll surprise you. The London Underground opened 25 years ago in 1863, making it the world's first underground railway. But in 1888, it's still expanding, still experimental, still terrifying to many Londoners who believe that travelling beneath God's earth is unnatural. The trains are pulled by steam locomotives. Yes, steam locomotives in underground tunnels, which means the atmosphere down here is barely breathable. We're on the platform now, and it's like standing in a tunnel carved through the underworld. The walls are brick, millions upon millions of bricks, stretching into darkness in both directions. Gas lamps flicker at intervals, creating pools of light surrounded by impenetrable shadow. The platform is packed with people from every social class, because the underground doesn't segregate the way surface transport does. A gentleman in evening dress might stand shoulder to shoulder with a factory worker still covered in coal dust. The rumble announces the train's arrival long before you see it. The sound builds, reverberating off brick walls, until finally the locomotive emerges from the tunnel like a dragon breathing smoke and fire. The engine is painted dark green, its brass fittings gleaming in the gaslight. But what's most striking is the smoke. Thick, black, choking smoke that fills the tunnel, making passengers cover their faces with handkerchiefs. The carriages are divided into compartments, first, second and third class. We're taking third class because that's where you see real London. The compartment is cramped, wooden benches worn smooth by thousands of passengers, windows that are really just open spaces with leather straps that can be pulled down in rain. As the train lurches forward, smoke pours through those windows, making everyone cough. Some passengers are reading newspapers by the dim light of overhead gas lamps. Others sit with eyes closed, resigned to the journey. Here's what's remarkable. We're traveling beneath one of the most densely populated cities on Earth. Above us, right now, 6 million people are going about their lives, the largest urban population ever assembled. London in 1888 is the capital of an empire that controls a quarter of the world's land surface and population. It's the financial center of global capitalism, the hub of international trade, the beating heart of the Industrial Revolution. And it's all supported by infrastructure that's being built and rebuilt constantly, often by workers who never see daylight. We're emerging now at King's Cross, transferring to another line that will take us east toward the city and beyond into the East End. The station here is chaos, multiple railway terminals converging, passengers streaming in every direction, vendors selling everything from hot chestnuts to matches to questionable meat pies. A flower girl, she can't be more than 10 years old, holds out a bouquet of wilted violets, her bare feet blue with cold on the wet stone. The fog is thicker when we emerge at Liverpool Street Station. This is proper London fog, what they're starting to call pea supers, a toxic mixture of coal smoke and water vapor that reduces visibility to arm's length. The fog has color, texture, even taste. It's yellow-green, thick enough to make breathing difficult, and it coats everything it touches with a greasy film. On nights like this, the death rate spikes. The elderly, the sick, children with weak lungs, they simply stop breathing. Tomorrow's newspapers will report the casualties like weather statistics. We're walking east now, along Commercial Street toward Whitechapel. And with every step, we're descending the social hierarchy of Victorian London. The transformation is stark, brutal, undeniable. Within half a mile, we've gone from respectable working-class neighborhoods to something approaching Dante's vision of the Inferno. The streets narrow. The buildings crowd closer together, blocking what little moonlight might penetrate the fog. The gas lights become less frequent. In the poorest districts, they barely exist at all. The smell intensifies. Here it's not just coal smoke, but human waste, rotting garbage, the stench of slaughterhouses where blood runs into gutters, the acrid tang of tanneries processing leather with chemicals so toxic they burn exposed skin. Look at these buildings. They're called rookeries, tenements packed with humanity at densities that defy imagination. A single room might house an entire family, sometimes multiple families. In the worst cases, people rent not rooms, but corners of rooms, or even space on a stairwell where they can sleep leaning against a wall. The buildings themselves are crumbling, held up by timber props, riddled with damp and structural decay that makes collapse a constant threat. Here's something that'll shock you. Less than 3 miles from where we started at Paddington, where wealthy passengers board trains to country estates, children are growing up in these Whitechapel rookeries, never having seen grass, never having touched clean water, never having slept in a bed alone. The life expectancy in the East End is literally half what it is in wealthy Western districts. A child born in Mayfair can expect to live past 50. A child born here in Whitechapel, 27 years. That's not ancient history. That's happening right now, in the capital of the world's most powerful empire. But London isn't just accepting these conditions, it's fighting back with the most ambitious public works projects ever attempted. Let me show you why. We're walking now toward the Thames embankment, and beneath our feet lies one of the engineering marvels of the age. The sewer system. Not the medieval cesspits and open drains that served London for centuries, but a completely new underground network designed by Joseph Bazalgette, a name you should know, because this man probably saved more lives than any doctor or general in human history. Before Bazalgette's sewers, London was drowning in its own waste. 6 million people produced. Well, you can imagine. Most of it went into cesspits beneath buildings, which regularly overflowed. Or it went into the Thames, which by the 1850s was essentially an open sewer. In 1858, 30 years ago, the summer heat made the stench so unbearable that Parliament had to soak the curtains in chloride of lime just to make the chambers bearable. They called it the Great Stink. Bazalgette's response was revolutionary. He designed a network of underground sewers, over 1,300 miles of brick-lined tunnels that intercept waste before it reaches the Thames and carry it downstream to treatment facilities beyond the city. The main sewers are large enough to walk through, some large enough to drive a carriage through. They're built with an engineering buffer. Bazalgette designed them to handle twice the population he expected London to reach, which means they're still functioning perfectly today, 130 years later. The Thames itself is transforming. 20 years ago, it was biologically dead. No fish, no plant life, just a toxic stream of industrial effluent and human waste. Now, thanks to the sewers, it's beginning to recover. Not clean, not by modern standards, but alive. Fish are returning. The smell is subsiding. It's an environmental recovery happening in real time, driven by Victorian engineering. We're crossing Blackfriars Bridge now, and even through the fog, the river reveals the scale of London's industrial might. The Thames is packed with shipping, ocean-going vessels from every corner of the empire, coastal traders, barges hauling coal and timber, ferries crossing between the north and south banks. The river is so crowded that collisions happen daily. Some nights, you can literally walk from bank to bank by stepping from deck to deck. The docks downstream handle more cargo than any other port on Earth. Tea from India and China, rubber from Malaya, timber from Canada, sugar from the Caribbean, wool from Australia, gold from South Africa. Everything flows through London, enriching merchants and ship owners, while the dockers who unload the cargo live in crushing poverty, competing desperately for casual labor that might earn them enough for a day's food. Look at that ship, the one with the tall masts and gleaming brasswork. That's a tea clipper designed for speed, capable of sailing from China to London in 100 days. The cargo in its hold is worth a fortune, but the sailors who brought it here are paid wages that would make a factory worker weep. Many are press-ganged, essentially enslaved, worked until their bodies break and then discarded. The fog is so thick now that we're navigating more by sound than sight. That rhythmic clanging? That's a pile driver working on the new Tower Bridge, which is still under construction. The bridge will be Victorian engineering at its finest. Twin bascules that can raise to allow shipping through, powered by hydraulic machinery housed in the towers themselves. But right now, it's just a construction site, dangerous and incomplete. We're in Whitechapel proper now, the heart of the East End, and the streets are alive despite the late hour. Pubs overflow with dock workers and factory labourers drowning their exhaustion in cheap gin. Street vendors still hawk their wares: hot eels, baked potatoes, second-hand clothes so worn they're barely recognisable as garments. Women stand in doorways and alley mouths, their profession obvious, their faces showing the brutal calculus of survival in a city that offers them no legitimate work. Here's something you need to understand. The women working these streets aren't characters in a morality tale. They're human beings trapped by economics. A seamstress might work 14 hours a day for wages that won't cover rent and food. Factory work offers similar poverty. Domestic service means submitting to the whims of employers who might be kind or might be monsters. For many women, particularly widows or those with children, selling their bodies is the only option that keeps them alive. And this year, 1888, those streets have become hunting grounds for someone the newspapers are calling Jack the Ripper. Between August and November, 5 women, Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly, have been brutally ended in these very streets. The city is gripped by terror and fascination in equal measure. The police are baffled. The newspapers are sensationalizing. And in the rookeries and common lodging houses of Whitechapel, women are terrified to venture out after dark, but many have no choice. The gas lamps here are fewer and dimmer. The police patrol in pairs, carrying bullseye lanterns and truncheons, but they're outnumbered and out of their depth. Crime in the East End isn't just common, it's the predominant economic activity. Pickpockets, burglars, fences handling stolen goods, loan sharks charging interest rates that ensure permanent debt, gangs controlling territory and extracting protection money from shopkeepers who can barely afford to stay open. Yet even here, in these desperate streets, you find resilience that defies description. In a basement room, a Jewish immigrant family just arrived from Eastern Europe shares a Sabbath meal, maintaining traditions that sustained them through pogroms and will sustain them through East End poverty. In a common lodging house, a woman who cleans office buildings before dawn teaches her daughter to read by candlelight, determined that the next generation will escape this trap. In a narrow court off Brick Lane, children play games as old as humanity, finding joy in circumstances that would break most adults. The building trades are reshaping the city constantly. Construction sites dot every district. New warehouses, new factories, new offices for the expanding bureaucracy of empire. The work is dangerous beyond modern comprehension. Men work at height with no safety equipment, walk across beams hundreds of feet up with nothing but balance and nerve keeping them alive. Falls happen daily. Crushed limbs, shattered spines, instant death. These are occupational hazards so common they barely merit newspaper mention. We're approaching Shadwell Basin now, one of the older dock complexes, and even at this hour it's a hive of activity. Ships berth and depart on the tide, which waits for no man's convenience. Cranes swing cargo in the darkness, guided by workers who've developed almost supernatural ability to move heavy loads in conditions where most people couldn't see their own hands. The dock basins themselves are marvels of engineering. Massive excavations lined with granite blocks, equipped with lock gates that control water levels, allowing ships to load and unload regardless of tidal state. Here's something remarkable. The hydraulic power network that operates these cranes and locks runs on water pressure from a centralized pumping station. It's the Victorian Internet, a physical network distributing power throughout the industrial districts. The same system powers lifts in office buildings, presses in printing houses, machinery in factories. It's infrastructure on a scale that required thinking about the city as an integrated system rather than a collection of individual buildings. But let's talk about what we're not seeing, because absence tells its own story. Electric light barely exists in London in 1888. A few wealthy homes have it. Some offices are experimenting with it. But overwhelmingly, London after dark is lit by gas. Millions of gas lamps, from grand street fixtures to flickering candles in basement rooms. The gas comes from coal, produced in vast gasworks that operate day and night, creating yet more pollution in a city already choking on industrial effluent. The night soil men are at work, workers who empty cesspits and privies under cover of darkness, carrying human waste in buckets to waiting carts. It's work so degrading that it's done when respectable people sleep, so the middle classes can pretend it doesn't happen. These men earn decent wages because nobody else will do the job, but the social stigma marks them as untouchable. We're walking back west now, climbing the social ladder with every step. The streets widen, the gas lights multiply, the buildings grow taller and more elaborate. By the time we reach the City of London, the financial district, we've entered another world entirely. Here stand the great institutions of Victorian capitalism, the Bank of England, the Royal Exchange, Lloyd's of London. These buildings are temples to commerce, constructed with materials imported from across the empire. Marble from Italy, granite from Scotland, timber from the Baltic. The architecture speaks of permanence, power, confidence that the British Empire will last forever. Inside these buildings, during business hours, fortunes are made and lost with the stroke of a pen. The telegraph, that miraculous technology, brings news from across the globe in minutes. A drought in India affects grain prices in London. A revolution in South America impacts coffee traders. A new gold strike in South Africa sends stock prices soaring. The financial markets operate globally, and London sits at the center of the web. But the workers who make this system function, the clerks, the messengers, the cleaners, they earn wages that consign them to those eastern slums we just left. A clerk might wear a respectable suit and work in a palatial office, but he goes home to a single room in Bethnal Green, where his entire family sleeps in one bed. The contrast between the wealth these institutions manage and the poverty of the people who operate them is stark beyond satire. We're approaching Westminster now, where the Thames curves and the fog begins to thin slightly. The Houses of Parliament loom through the murk, Gothic revival architecture so elaborate it seems almost delirious. This building is less than 30 years old, constructed after fire destroyed the old medieval palace. It's a statement in stone. Britain is modern, powerful, eternal. But inside that building, politicians are wrestling with questions that will define the next century. How to reconcile industrial progress with human welfare. How to govern an empire that spans continents while poverty festers in the imperial capital. How to extend political rights without threatening established power. These debates aren't theoretical, they're existential, because Victorian Britain is walking a tightrope between progress and catastrophe. The social reformers are gaining ground. Charles Booth is conducting his survey of London poverty, documenting conditions so appalling they'll shock even hardened parliamentarians. The Salvation Army is providing soup and shelter to the homeless. Trade unions are organising despite legal obstacles. The seeds are being planted for the welfare state, for labour rights, for the gradual expansion of democracy. It's past midnight now, and we're crossing Westminster Bridge back toward the South Bank. From here, the fog permitting, you can see the whole sweep of Victorian London, the dome of St Paul's Cathedral rising above the medieval street plan, the towers of Westminster, the forests of chimneys pumping smoke into the atmosphere, the serpentine curve of the Thames reflecting gaslight and moonlight in equal measure. This city represents the pinnacle of 19th century civilization and its deepest contradictions. London has achieved things no previous city could imagine. It's built underground railways and continent-spanning telegraph networks. It's engineered sewers that prevent disease and monuments that celebrate empire. It's created wealth on scales that would humble Croesus. But it's also created poverty that would horrify the Victorians' medieval ancestors. Inequality that makes a mockery of British claims to moral superiority. Working conditions that grind human beings into component parts of industrial machinery. Within a generation, things will begin to change. The 1890s will bring the first serious housing reforms. The Edwardian era will see expansion of welfare provisions. The First World War will shatter the class system that makes such inequality possible. By the 1930s, the worst of the East End slums will be cleared. By the 1950s, the Clean Air Act will banish the killing fog forever. But standing here in November 1888, none of that is visible. London seems permanent, unchangeable, the natural order of things. The wealthy assume they deserve their wealth. The poor are told their poverty reflects moral failings. The empire appears invincible. The Victorian certainties feel as solid as the Portland stone cladding on the Bank of England. Yet history teaches us that the most confident civilizations are often closest to transformation. The seeds of change are already germinating in these foggy streets, in the minds of socialists organizing in East End basements, in the notebooks of social reformers documenting poverty, in the growing consciousness of workers that exploitation isn't natural law but human choice. So if you enjoyed this journey through Victorian London's darkest corners and brightest innovations, through the fog and gaslight of the world's largest city, at the height of its power and the depth of its contradictions, hit that subscribe button. Every week I'm bringing these pivotal moments in history back to life with the same attention to atmosphere, the same commitment to showing you the texture of lived experience, the same determination to make you feel the past, rather than just learn about it. I'm Arthur, and I want to know, what historical event should I bring to life next? Let me know in the comments.